Good morning, everybody. Welcome to week 2 of distance learning. It's your friend, Mrs. Murray here. Hope you're all doing really well. I hope you're not consuming all of the food that you have in your house in huge doses like I've been doing. We get so many different restaurants who will deliver to us, and we've been taking full advantage to that. Also places where we can pick up food. So honestly, the last time I was out of my house was sometime this week. I drove to Panera Bread and picked up some bagels and some scones and things. And it was the first time I was out of my house. It's the only time I've been out of my house in about 10 days, aside from taking walks around the neighborhood. So I'm doing my best to be distantly far in a social manner, I guess you might say. So I hope you are all staying safe and I hope you are all making good choices. As ever, my contact information is at the top of this sheet. Of course, you can always email me because I will get back to you as soon as I can. This week, we are going back into our career planning unit and we're going to start by building our resume. Before we go into our weekly focus and our learning goals, I want you to look at the bottom of this sheet here. What is a resume? A resume is defined as a brief written account of personal, educational, and professional qualifications and experience prepared by an applicant for a job. So this week, you are going to be assembling the information needed to develop your own resume. And much of that information you will be building on from the brainstorming activity you did last week. So we're taking your prior learning and we're going to build on it to create your resume. So now let's jump up again and look at the weekly focus. We're going to be working on a resume workshop this week. It's actually sort of a worksheet that you will be filling out and then you'll be able to take that information and type it up and have a beautiful resume. Notice that it is not due until April 19th because we start spring break this week and you'll have about 5 school days off, I want to say. I might be inaccurate there, but you get off Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and then Monday. So it's 4 school days and the weekend. So take a little time for yourself. You won't have to do any schoolwork because I've given you plenty of time to get your resume workshop taken care of. Your learning goals, of course, will be able to retrieve known information. Of course, that's the information that came from your brainstorming activity regarding life and work experiences, and you're going to apply this information to a structured format, which is the resume workshop. Plus, you are going to be able to use formal writing to craft a career objective for use in your resume. Now, what is a career objective? That is when you write in your resume what your personal goal is. And most of the time, it is something like, my goal is to get a job as a welder where I can work underwater, or something like that. And when we get to that part of today's lesson, I'll go into that a little more in depth. I want to tell you something else too. The resume I use right now, I have been using for about 25 years. I just update it every time that I apply for a new job. So the resume that the last time I applied for a job was for Mora High School, and I used the same resume that I have been using for years. I just updated it to reflect all of my teaching positions and educational positions that I've had over the years. So it's all the same format. So I've got a resume that is for education. I've got a resume that is for journalism. I've got a resume that is for administrative work in offices. And I've got a resume that is for freelance theater. But it looks the same and it has a lot of the same basic information except for my work experience because I tend to gear it, the work experience on my resume, towards the job that I want. So I'm going to, you might have heard that I just had a little click there, and that's because I've got the last stages of a cold, and it's actually a cold because it is a a wet cough per se, as opposed to a dry cough. And every now and then I have to stop and get a little drink of water because I haven't been talking all that much. My husband and I don't sit and carry on conversations for hours. But anyway, we're going to look at the learning progressions now. Your goal, of course, as always, is to aim for that 3. So you see that our first goal is being able to retrieve known information regarding life and work experiences, like we talked about before. And you are aiming for that number 3, writing informative text to convey information clearly and accurately. What I said before about varying the writing, that goes up into the number 4 area. Not saying that my resume is perfect, but I can adapt my writing to suit my audience and my purpose. And in this case, I'm able to adapt my resume to suit the person for whom I'm applying for my job. And then my learning progression number 2, of course, is being able to use formal writing to craft a career objective to use in your resume. And I want to talk to you about formal style. Do you remember when we did To Kill a Mockingbird and we talked about the term code switching? And we talked about how you talk one way in school with your friends and you talk another way in school in front of the principals, because you know that there is a more formal way you have to speak in front of people of authority. And sometimes there are places where you can use certain language, and there are places where you can't use certain language. So when you write your resume, your goal is to write as if you are writing a letter to your principal. You're going to use a more formal style and a more formal tone. The hard part is look at that number 4, is incorporating your own voice, because sometimes that part gets lost when you're writing a resume, but we're going to do the best we can to try to aim for that 4. Okay? So step 1 is where you include your personal information. You'll notice that I have used my own. Pay very close attention to where there are commas, where there are capital letters, for instance, in my name, the name of the town where I live. Notice I've actually given my real house number, so, please don't show up on my doorstep. I won't let you in. And also, I've got a phone number there that is a phone number you can use in case you need to reach me during the day. It's my Google phone number. Sometimes you see the area code in parentheses. In this case, because the area code is something that you're going to want to dial, or the person who needs to reach you wants to use your area code, you need to have it set up, formatted like this, okay? And then, of course, my school email address. Pay very close attention to capital letters and punctuation, and then those spaces between the punctuation and the next word, because a lot of you love you, but you all tend to get a little sloppy with some of this, okay? And one of those areas is leaving out the spaces between punctuation and the next word. Here's where that career objective is, and I have used my own objective to obtain a position in a rural but progressive school district where I can utilize my talents as both an instructor and theater artist. You want to make sure you write something about what you are good at and what you are seeking, so that the people you are applying to know that you are confident in your skills and in your abilities. I know that I have a talent as an instructor and I have a talent as a theater artist, and I want to find a job where I can use both of those at the same time. Okay? Then we go on to education. All of you will start with Mora High School first, because that's where we are. If you went to another high school, that will go underneath Mora High School. So, especially for those of you who went to Pine or who went to Ogilvie, you need to find out the addresses of those schools this week when you're working on your resume workshop. because you'll need to include that under education. Most of you who started in 7th grade at Mora High School, you started it in the fall of 2017, and then we put a hyphen, and then we put the present because you were still attending there. Then you're going to put your anticipated graduation date, which is the spring of 2022. Okay? Make sure all of this looks like this on your paper. You can copy this word for word because I don't have a problem with that, and it is accurate. Make sure, again, you've got those spaces and the punctuation where it belongs, okay? Notice after Minnesota, there is no punctuation before the zip code, okay? Of course, when you type up your resume, it doesn't look like this, but we'll get there in the next lesson. Moving on. Step 4 is your experience. You start with the most recent experience, the job you are doing right now, and then you go backwards in time. So I've put Mora High School here, and then I've put all of the duties that I do. Notice that I have it in past tense, and I did that just to be consistent, because here it's going to be past tense, and then my previous job is also going to be in past tense. I like that parallelism, and so you're going to do that too. Some of you may not have any work experience where you've gotten paid, but I would say 98% of you whose brainstorming worksheets I have read, if you didn't have work experience, you've got volunteering experience, and that's going to you're going to use that in place of this. So this week when you are doing this worksheet, you need to figure out who those people were that you worked for, a rough date of when you worked, and what your duties were. Now consider, sometimes people have a hard time thinking about what their duties are. And let me give you an example. Last year, somebody said that they worked at McDonald's. And I said, well, what do you do at McDonald's? And he's like, well, I run the till. I'm like, you don't ever talk to customers? Well, yeah, of course I do. I said, okay, that's another thing you do. And I said, do you ever cook food? Well, sometimes. And as we started talking, he realized all of the things that he does at his job. See, most of the time he does customer service. He waits on people, but he wasn't considering the fact that another part of the night he might be cleaning the restroom, or he might be refilling the ketchup containers, or he might be working the drive-through. And so that's all stuff that goes under your duties. If you are somebody who works a job only in the summer times, well, then you're going to put just like summer 2016 to summer 2019, okay? And if the person who's reading your resume is going to see that and realizes that, will realize then that then you only work those jobs in the summertime. Step 4 is your references. These are people you're going to talk to, and you're going to get their full name and their address and their phone number, and they're going to be somebody that the person to whom you're applying for a job can call and ask about your work ability, your character, specific things about you. I have included my information there already. If you want to use me for a reference, you may. However, you have to ask me first. It is not automatic. You have to ask everybody who you put on your resume if you can use them. You may email coaches. You may phone people from your church. It cannot be a family member. It cannot be somebody in your class or somebody you go to school with. It has to be someone who's in a position of authority, okay? And you have to, like I said before, you have to ask your references for permission to use them. So, former bosses, current bosses, and you can tell your current boss too that you're doing this for a school project. That way they don't think that you're off trying to find another job someplace, okay? So if you work at Dairy Queen, you can ask your supervisor if you can put them down for a reference, okay? If any of this doesn't make sense, you have to let me know, okay? But when you see the resume worksheet, it's going to make a lot more sense, okay? And then we're going to the last page. Final notes. Complete the form. Now that we're done with this, the explanation, you're going to complete the form that's marked Resume Workshop found on classwork, okay? There are 2 pieces of criteria that are on that Resume Workshop that I did not cover. You're going to write down awards and honors, and you're also going to write down background information. In that background information, I want you to make sure you include things such as you have been on the basketball team for 5 years. You have excellent communication skills. You can use Google applications. You are an excellent typist, that sort of thing. That's all going to go in your background information, okay? Because that's how you pad your resume. You start adding things in there that speak to the other things you can do, okay? So it's not always just your education. It's not always just your job, but also interesting things that have happened to you in your life. So I sometimes put that I was a phone-a-friend on the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game show because I think that's interesting. And people remember me because of that piece of information. And they ask me questions in interviews about that experience for me. You also, during this next few days, you need to contact the people you want to use for references. Shoot me an email if you want me to use you, if you want to use me for a reference, okay? Make sure you think I'm somebody who's going to give you a reference, though. If you're somebody who persistently falls asleep in class, I might not feel good about letting you use my name, okay? Then, last thing, there is an exit ticket on classwork. When you are done, you're going to look at that exit ticket. It goes back to giving yourself a little score on those learning progressions. How do you feel you did? Like which part, are you a 3 or are you a 4? Or do you feel like you're somewhere in between a 2 and a 3, okay? Please don't forget to turn your work in on Classroom. Sometimes people have been completing the work and then they're not turning it in. So you have to make sure that you do that part too, okay? And please make sure you contact me with any questions at all, okay? I spend a lot of time with my computer waiting for people in case they have questions. Seriously, I spent most of last week just sitting with a computer in my lap, okay? So, all of you have a great week. Have a great week next week because I won't be talking to you until Tuesday. And have a nice vacation. Do something fun for yourself, as fun as you can when you're on a lockdown in the state. And please take care of yourselves, okay? I miss you, and I really hope to see you soon. Even if you don't have any questions for me, feel free to reach out in case you're feeling cranky or if something funny happened. I mean, I really wish I could talk to you all about that silly, I don't know if you saw Tiger King on Netflix, but that show's crazy. And I've been watching some funny TikToks and just having, when I have free time, when I'm not stuck forcing myself to look at emails from everybody, I've been doing some funny stuff too. So I want you guys to be having a good time too and getting some good rest, okay? Take care of you. Bye.